Hi, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for coming out and spending time this afternoon. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you all today. My name is Tim and we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about your data environment and more specifically why your data environment is critical to your Copilot success. That's the security of your data environment, the governance of your data environment. I'm going to be sharing a tried and true approach that we use at AvePoint that we've used across multiple clients to help them get them over the hump and get them successful with Microsoft Copilot. But not just sharing the approach, I'll actually share a case study and show you how we did it for these particular clients. Now, for those I haven't had a chance to meet yet, as I said, my name is Tim and I'm based in Loudoun County, Virginia. You might guess from my accent, I'm not originally from Virginia, I'm originally from Australia, but I've been out here since 2019 and I love this country. And I've actually been in the SharePoint space for around 2 decades now, coming on 2 decades, and starting with SharePoint on-prem and primarily in intranets, knowledge management, information management, data governance, all the exciting topics, right? And from SharePoint on-prem up to M365 in the cloud to today where I'm a Microsoft MVP for M365 Copilot. So today I work for a company called AvePoint, and it helps if this is switched on. Excellent. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of AvePoint, you can look right over there. We've got a booth. We are a global SaaS provider that has a solution for providing data security, data governance, and data resilience for all of your unstructured collaborative content that's in your clouds like Microsoft 365, Google, and Salesforce. One of the things that we help our clients with is making sure that all of that fluid, collaborative, unstructured data is secure and managed, and that really we're helping them maximize that ROI that they're getting out of the data in those clouds. But we're not here today to talk about AvePoint. If you want to know a little bit more about us as a company, you can come by the booth a little bit later. Today, we're really here to talk about Copilot. And I think for all of us in this room, all of us here today, we understand the value of Copilot. We see the benefits of it. But could I get a show of hands? How many of you here have actually moved out of your pilot phase and have successfully deployed Copilot for everyone across your organization? We have 1, 2, 3. All right, we've got some hands up. That's awesome. But for the rest of you, don't feel too bad. You are not alone. Okay, the research says, and this is a recent research paper from Gartner, about how one of the key takeaways I got is that only 6% of deployments actually move past a pilot into a full production, which means that a whopping 94% of deployments don't actually get into that final production. And we know in this room it's not Copilot's fault, right? Copilot's fantastic. Copilot is secure. Copilot, it's not like ChatGPT out on the web. Copilot's searching your data, grounded on your data securely, your work data. It's integrated into your Office apps in a way that ChatGPT and other LLMs aren't, giving you really unique capabilities like Copilot in Edge or Copilot in Word. By the way, if you haven't played with Copilot in Edge yet, I really recommend it. That's one of the coolest, most underused features. But we know that's not the challenge here. So what is it? So we know from our research and from our work with clients that there's a number of challenges that stop companies from getting over that final hump. And these could be they haven't identified the use cases that are really compelling to the C-suite to get them over that line. Maybe they've got some challenges with adoption where they haven't quite got over that adoption hump. Like, don't forget, if you rip out the old Outlook and put in a new Outlook, everybody has to use it, right? But if you add Copilot on the side of everything, people don't have to use it. They don't have to click the button. So adoption is a big challenge. However, there is one thing at the moment, one trend that's been emerging since the beginning of this year that is the #1 blocker to Copilot deployments. And in fact, not just Copilot, but generative AI in general, and that's weak information management, right? Now, we've been talking about information management, probably a lot of us in this room who've been managing Microsoft 365 environments. We've been talking about information management for decades now, okay? We often see this through a knowledge management lens or a productivity lens, or for a lot of us, it's through a compliance lens, right? How are we making sure our data isn't running afoul of GDPR or PII or HIPAA or other kinds of things? But up until recently, this has been really difficult to get executives and people on board with actually rolling out good information governance unless you've had a compelling event, right? The great thing about AI is it's now shining a light on the quality of our data, on the security of our data, and that is becoming the compelling event. Okay? So this is not just an AI race anymore, this is a data race. Which companies can get their data cleaned and secured the fastest to be able to extract that knowledge out of them? Now, one of the questions you might be asking us is, well, if we've known about this knowledge management for a while and we know that this is important, what's holding us back? Why haven't we got there? So funny thing is, if you go to your executive team today and you say, is your data important? Do you think this is critical? They'll say, absolutely, we know our data is important. So, okay, cool, do you trust your data? And they will say, no, we don't trust our data. There's a lot of junk in there. There's a lot of things that we don't understand. So the gap between expectation and reality here is huge, right? So the question is why? Why don't we trust our data? So we actually did our own research on this. So AvePoint got together with AIM, the Association of Intelligent Information Management Professionals, and we did our own survey and our own research into this. And what we discovered is that for a large number of organizations, they are managing over a petabyte of data, and a lot of that data is legacy data. More than half of it is more than 5 years old. Right? Just by the way, 5 years ago was like 2020 or 2019. So if you think about how the world has changed post-pandemic, right, how much of that information is really going to be useful to you today? There is some, don't get me wrong, you can't just blanket delete everything older than 5 years, but the trick is, how do you find that out? It's not easy to do, right? And similarly, of those same organizations, only half felt confident that they understood how their information was getting secured. And nearly everybody that we spoke to was having some sort of challenge with data quality or data security when it came to their AI deployment. So this is what's holding people back. In fact, when we did this survey, of the top 3 reasons, 2 of them, one was data quality and legacy data and understanding how good our data is, and the other one was data overexposure. So this is definitely top of mind. Okay. So the challenge that we've got here is it's really coming down to the sheer volume of data at our fingertips. The unstructured data is constantly moving, it's fluid, it's constantly getting collaborated on, and the scale and complexity of addressing this is what's holding people back. But it is not all doom and gloom. There's some good news here. One of the things that we discovered in our research, and also that's backed up by Gartner and Forrester, is that organizations that have good data management, have good information governance in place, are 1.5 times more likely to be successful with their AI initiatives. So if that's not a prompt for your executives to get behind good information management, I don't know what is. So that's the why, right? That's the what's happened and the why in terms of why securing your data estate's important. Now we get to the fun bit, the how. How do we do this? So again, I've been doing this for about 20 years now, and I've seen different frameworks and methodologies come and go. This is one of my current favorite ones. This is from IBM, and this is a report on generating ROI with your AI initiatives. And there's 2 things I love about this. Number one, it's agnostic. Okay, this is an IBM report. It's not an AvePoint report. It's not a Microsoft report. This is a report. It's an industry-leading IBM report. But number 2, it's coming through an AI lens. So it's not coming through your traditional compliance or data security. It's coming in through how do we be successful with AI. And it tells us that there's 6 things that we need to do to be successful with our AI initiative. And all of these are important, by the way, whether it's setting your vision and strategy. So in a Copilot context, what are we trying to do with Copilot? How do we know when we're successful and how are we measuring this? You've got adoption and training, which as we mentioned is also very important to make sure your users understand what the tool is and how to use it. But like we said, the number one challenge that everybody's having at the moment is around your data quality. And I love the way they sum this up and present this back to people. You need to have core capabilities in your organization, and that's a key point. It's not just a one-time cleanup act. This is, you need to have the controls and the capabilities in place in your org to simplify, automate, secure, and control your data. So let me break this down into what this looks like in a real-world situation. So we were working with a client recently who's a global Fortune 100 organization. They have over 100,000 employees. They're a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they've been spending 9 months with a full team of people trying to clean up their data estate unsuccessfully. So they were using M365. They were failing an ISO audit. So their security audits were not matching the policies and the results they were getting in place in their environment. And they were trying to do this themselves. They're trying to DIY it, right? So they were pulling out admin center reports, trying to craft their own PowerShell scripts. And this is fine. That's a fine thing to do if you've got all the time in the world. But like I said, they spent 9 months and they really weren't even scratching the surface just due to the sheer scale and volume of the complexity. The scripts were falling over. They weren't getting the results that they needed. So this is where AvePoint came in to help. So again, applying the framework of simplify, secure, automate, and control. If you are going to eat this elephant, right, one bite at a time, this is the bite that we suggest you start with. First of all, start by simplifying your data estate. And we recommend this for a couple of reasons. Number one, You can't manage what you're not measuring. If you don't know what your data estate looks like, if you haven't done a full audit, if you haven't had that full visibility into where all your data is, it's going to be impossible to get a handle on it. But number two, if you can reduce that data footprint, not only does it give you better results, right, but it gives you less to manage and control and secure later on. So we always recommend this as a first step. So what this was able to do was we were able to do a scan of their M365 environment, and we ingested over 200,000 site collections, ingested and cleaned 200,000 site collections in just a few months. So this wasn't just getting visibility into, first of all, their rot, their redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. So we could see where are the old files, where are the duplicate files, where are the files that nobody's touched in like 10 years that doesn't need to be there. Heck, one of the great things about Copilot is that it cites its sources. So if you get a wacky result back from someone, like, I'm searching and I get a result back, you can click on it and see the document it came from, which is awesome, right? So it's not hallucinating, it came from somewhere. But actually one of these clients, they were pulling results from a document that was 18 years old. That's old enough to drink in Australia, by the way. And it had come from they'd done a merger and acquisition 18 years ago. It was from SharePoint on-prem, migrated to the cloud. Everybody forgot about it. Nobody's looked at it in forever, but suddenly it was showing up in Copilot results. So first step, scan that, understand what it is, and then from here you can take action. And by the way, this is not scanning site by site like some of the out of the box. This is a tenant-wide scan that breaks down by department, by team, by region, by business context, and that's the critical part. Because our platform plugs into the admin center, you can then delegate our platform out to your business owners, different regions, different departments, different data owners, so they can take control of cleaning up their data too. And you can take all sorts of action from deleting, archiving with M365 Archive or Offsite Archive, or moving. And this plugs in with all of the native out-of-the-box retention, sensitivity labeling, all that kind of stuff as well. But the key part, scanning and simplifying and cutting down your data estate. The other thing that this helped us do, that process of ingesting 200,000 sites, we're then adding governance. Because for each site, we now know who is the business owner, which department does it belong to, what kind of sensitive does it contain, and that means we can now start assessing risk. So we go from simplify to secure. The next critical step in preparing your data estate for Copilot, after you've simplified the footprint, is to get rid of that oversharing, get rid of the risky data. Now, there'll be some schools of thought that say, well, if something's tagged as sensitive, just encrypt it and don't let it show up in Copilot. Well, that's an option, right? I get that. However, the value of Copilot comes from unlocking your knowledge. You want it to be searchable, but you want it to be searchable to the right people. So what we're able to do, again, this is not site by site, this is not pasting in a list of exceptions into the admin center. This gives you a tenant-wide view of all of the sites across your entire environment, Teams, SharePoint, chats, the whole lot, and it will give you a full overview into where is your sensitive data living? What exposure does it have? It will put it on a matrix for you of exposure and sensitivity, so you can actually target the highly sensitive, highly exposed items first. What do we have that's sensitive that's shared with the whole company, for example? Or what do we have that's sensitive that's shared with external users? Have we done a cleanup on our external users? How many groups do we have that have external access in sensitive spots that perhaps shouldn't be there? And again, now we're getting that cross-section of the business context and the governance from doing the data ingestion and cleanup, along with the security and the oversharing, so we can make intelligent decisions about how we're doing this. By going through this process with this client, we actually helped them remove 20,000 guest users that they'd forgotten about that had access to random stuff, and 15,000 shadow users that, again, had access to things that they weren't used to. This is kind of a byline. This isn't exactly part of that audit, but one of the things I like is we have the ability to do a spot check, sanity check, and do a search for a permission or object. So let's say you're in a situation where your leadership is coming down and saying, why is Tim getting this access? He searched Copilot and he's getting this document. I don't understand why he's got that there. This will enable you to punch in the name of a user, group, or object and see all of the permissions that are both direct and inherited and trace where they're coming from, and you can reset those permissions from this dashboard. And in fact, that's another important thing about securing your data estate. There's a lot of ways to pull reports out of the admin center about where oversharing is. Not a lot of options for actually resolving it at scale. From these dashboards, we plug into the Microsoft APIs. After you get the report, you can then click in and resolve these, re-inherit, change, do this all at scale. And you can do it either automatically or with a human in the loop too. So this is how you actually scale these data management challenges. We've simplified our data. We've secured our data. The next step is control, right? So doing a one-time cleanup of your data estate is very important, and you all should do it if you haven't already. But what's even better, if we put guardrails in place to prevent that happening in the first place. So one of the things that we implemented for them is a set of controls. We have over 300 templates out of the box ready to go, both based on compliance rules, but also just generally best practices for managing your M365 environment, like putting renewals on external users and checking in on them every 6 months, and being able to see things like, where have I got inactive guest users in a site where a site has added a guest user but they haven't touched it in 6 months or something like that. So we were able to put these guardrails in place. And again, Microsoft has some out-of-the-box stuff, like you can say, all right, Patrick is a site owner. And there's a lot of things that come with a site owner, and we might have business reasons for making Patrick a site owner, but we might want to say, Patrick, you shouldn't change the look and feel on the site. Or Patrick, you can add some external users, maybe from this vendor, but not from that vendor. That's where you need that granularity and control to be able to have something that's looking at the APIs, looking at your configuration. And even though Patrick, as a site owner, has every right in the world on the platform to change the look and feel, we can catch that and revert it back, right? Reverse that configuration drift, roll it back to how it's supposed to be. I mean, if we can catch it in real time, if Microsoft gives us the APIs, we will. But for the things we don't, we definitely catch them and roll it back, or alert an administrator to come and look at it. And we can do this across Power Platform as well. So things like if you've got connectors that you don't want people using, or you've got certain policies around which teams are allowed to use what kinds of connectors or Power Apps, Copilot Studio, that's something we can do too. But that was not done at this client. Finally, the last step is automate, right? So one of the things we want to do is reduce the burden on our IT teams and automate as much as possible. So I talked you through the simplify, secure, and control. And I mentioned for those control policies, some of them we can roll back automatically, some we roll back manually, but there's another step to automation, is bringing your users in and making it easy for them to do the right thing. Right? So instead of having to ingest 200,000 sites and figure out what the sensitivity is, what if you could capture it up front? So we help them implement, for example, a provisioning process. So instead of users going into Teams and clicking create a team, users go into Teams now and click request a team, and they fill in business information. And you can make this as complicated or as simple as you need to. You can have as many approval or as few approvals as you like. But essentially, we're now asking the users, the data stewards themselves, the business owners, what is this site for? What kind of information is it containing? Are you planning to have external users? And you can send them down branching paths. And at the end of this, it'll go through an automated approval and automated provisioning. Again, saving your team's time of manually having to do this. But the cool part about that is now we have our governance captured. So at that point of creation, we now in the back end have a list of all the site collections, all the teams, who the owner is, what they're planning to do with it. And now we can automate the attestation and renewal as well. So we can put automated policies in place to say, hey, this site contains super sensitive content. Every 6 months, go back to the business owner and get them to double check the permissions and get them to double check the external users. This shouldn't all be on the shoulders of IT, right? IT and security can't carry this burden for everyone. And the more we can automate this process and get the users involved, the more sustainable this is going to be, so we don't have to run through and do these cleanups all over again. So the end result of this is we allowed them to feel confident in deploying AI, deploying Microsoft 365 Copilot. It wasn't just about getting them over the hump of their ISO audit, which we did do, but that was the green light that then enabled their IT team to be able to roll out Copilot and other GenAI initiatives. So what I've just talked through there was our approach of simplify, secure, control, and automate. So this is a tried and true way, and all of these are individual capabilities in our platform, and they're needed for AI success. However, we also have a view, we have our command center view as well, where all of this is rolled up into a single view. So if we're talking about scaling, those of us in the room have to manage this. If you want that instant view in terms of how many Copilot licenses have I assigned, how many are active, how many are unused and can I reassign? How's my sensitive items growing day over day? How many managed workspaces have I got? How many are inactive? How many do I need to go and chase up and manage, right? As well as an overview of our ROC data, redundant, obsolete, trivial. Is it growing? Is it not growing? And clicking through and getting intelligent recommendations on what to do next. So our platform will actually recommend to you, hey, you should be archiving some data now. You should be applying an inactive site policy because you have a lot of policies going on. And since we're talking scale, if you want to go true scale, I mentioned before we can delegate out to departments, delegate out to business owners. We are now in the upcoming release. This is a brand new thing. You'll see this talked about on our next quarterly roadmap webinar. We can take this down to the individual user as well. So at AvePoint, when they rolled out Copilot, we had all our governance stuff managing all our sites, that's fine. But individual users, like me, were told before you get your license, you have to go clean up your OneDrive. Like go and fix all the stuff that's in your OneDrive, right? So we now have a dashboard for that too that you can send out to all of your individual users so they can see how many risky items are in their OneDrive. They can manually review them and manually address them. Where are their sharing links if they've got externally stuff shared? So this is a fantastic resource. If you're talking true scale about cleaning up OneDrives and personal data at like scale, this is a great way to do it. So we're at about 20-minute mark, so let me just quickly wrap up here. Just a reminder, it's not an AI race, it's a data race. There's a lot of very valuable data in your knowledge. There's also some risk that's holding a lot of people back, but the quicker you can get on top of that, tag, categorize, understand your data, give people the confidence that your data is secured, the faster time to value you're going to have with your AI initiatives. And the way that we do this is by identifying where your data sources are, simplifying and cleaning your legacy data to get rid of the junk results, audit your security posture, understand where your oversharing is, and then resolve it at scale. Enforce this with policies, so going forward, you don't fall into the same traps again and you don't have to keep cleaning it up, and automate as much as you can, and bring in your users and your data stewards because everybody's responsible for data security. And on that, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. So we have a few resources here. Thank you. We have a few resources. You can scan this. You can see more about our Copilot success. If you want to see our tool in action, we have demos over there, over at our booth. I put a picture of our booth here, but it's right over there. I didn't really need to add that in. And feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you've got any other questions. And yeah, thank you very much.